Entitled X demands an engagement ring after breaking up with me. A while back, I was dating this girl for roughly 2 years. I thought things were going great, but apparently she was just dating me because she liked to tell people she was in a relationship. That's how it went with her. The way she described me was too immature, decent in bed, and honestly not worth the rest of my life. Exact words she said to a friend of hers after we broke up. Anyhow, I'm getting ahead of myself. I went out and bought a ring. Had this entire thing planned out to propose to her. However, she was suddenly not available for several weeks in a row. Well, my fears rang true as she suddenly showed up at my place one day. She acted like everything was normal as we talked, and she was grabbing everything that was hers. About halfway through, I just kind of looked at her and said, "Don't forget your hairdryer. It would be awkward to have to come back over after you dump me." This sparked a long and awkward conversation where she was fake crying. I realized right then and there that I was an idiot. The way she acted, the way she spoke, and the way she treated me just screamed that she did not care. I was devastated, but seeing her made me angry. I had realized she was lying to me this entire time. About a month later, a friend of hers called me up, asked if she could come over to talk. I asked why. She said my ex had ticked her off and she wanted to tell me some things. My mind goes to horrifying things, like she needs to warn me I need to see a doctor or things like that. Well, her friend came over and we chatted for a while. See, her friend was beyond angry. So her way to get revenge was to sleep with the ex-boyfriend, me. Being in my mental state, I said yes. More like I said, sure, yeah, we can do that if you really want to. So she ends up staying over for a few days as we get to talking about my ex. I tell her about the ring and she had the best idea to get back at my ex. Let's lay down in bed and post a pic of ourselves with a ring in between us. Yeah, I thought it was a terrible idea, but I wanted my ex to feel like trash. So, well, there you go. Not even 2 hours later, my ex was at the door. We posted the picture at like 11 a.m. and she was at my place at 12:40 something. Right off the bat, she tried to act like breaking up with me was a mistake. She said that I was the best boyfriend she ever had, and she was getting scared with how serious things were getting. She said she made a terrible mistake in breaking up with me. Well, her friend immediately goes into a rant about my ex, saying that she was manipulative and that neither of us would believe the sob story she was telling. I've got to say, I'm very glad her friend was there, because my stupid butt nearly believed my ex. I reminded her of how she treated me when she broke up with me and told her she should go home. She was wasting her time. Well, now she brought up the ring, said she owned it under the law, said that rings are gifts and that I cannot take it back. In unison, me and her friend said that I never gave it to her. We both looked at each other and laughed a bit, as the absurdity of the situation was getting outrageous. She said she was owed that ring and that she was not leaving without it. At about this time, a police officer came up the stairs wanting to know what the trouble was. I guess we made enough noise that the neighbors called the police. The female officer asked what the situation was. Everyone tried to talk at once, and the officer shut us down, pointed to my ex and asked her what the problem was. She said she was trying to pick up her stuff after we broke up. The officer asked me if it was true. I explained the situation, how my ex broke up with me before I had the chance to propose, and that she was never given the ring. Throughout the conversation, 2 more officers showed up, one a supervisor. The whole story was explained like 4 times. At one point, my ex said that the money from the ring will let her pay off her car. Ever see a moment when someone says something so outrageous that everyone looks at them in utter disgust? I responded that the ring isn't expensive. It was bought off of a website, and I reminded her that I am an IT tech. So this wasn't a ring that was 10 or 12 grand. More like $1.5 grand. The anger and rage that came over her face was immediately apparent to everyone. She stepped forward and punched me in the chest and kicked at me before being tackled to the ground by the female officer. The supervisor on scene told us to go inside while they get her under control. We did, and about 10 minutes later, they came back. They wanted my statement. I told them I didn't want to press charges against her, but they said, yeah, it doesn't work like that. We saw it, so it's being processed. She ended up getting a misdemeanor offense for it. So the OP doesn't really give us this because he's too focused on telling us the story that definitely happened, but the comments offer a lot of advice for anyone who ever has a legal dispute over an engagement ring. Basically, since it's only a gift that was given to signify a marriage, it returns to the original owner if the marriage doesn't happen. But a few commenters warn people never to propose to someone on a holiday, or the ring might be seen as a legitimate gift rather than a marriage contract. As for the OP's situation, it doesn't really matter. Even if you're willing to believe that he's so good in bed his ex's friend stayed over all week for a marathon of revenge nookie, and even if you buy that a police supervisor somehow didn't know that processing refers only to arrest procedures and not whether charges are filed, it doesn't change that nobody who's ever called 911 and waited 35 minutes for one bored cop to show up is going to believe 2 beat cops and a supervisor showed up because someone overheard 23 seconds of fake crying from next door. But if you're going to lie on Reddit, thanks for at least telling a lie that taught us some neat facts about marriage law. I poisoned my boyfriend with urine, but at least it wasn't mine. I've been cleaning the top floor of my house, which previously hasn't been cleaned in a decade. I'm moving up there, and so I've been putting in an absurd amount of time and effort to make it spotless. I have a cat that lived up there in the storage areas that I've been scrubbing. This cat also peed on the floor, and no one bothered to clean it. So I've been spending a lot of time trying anything and everything to get these dark urine stains out of the floor. I started with vinegar, then moved on to baking soda, and today was hydrogen peroxide. I have about 7 spray bottles full of different stuff like vinegar, water, and other cleaning products. I didn't have another spray bottle to dilute the hydrogen peroxide, so I just mixed it in a glass. I used paper towels to soak the floor and just dunked it in and out of the glass as needed. Unsurprisingly, it didn't really work, but that's not my biggest mistake. My lovely, amazing, and supportive boyfriend came over to help me do some cleaning today, mostly taking the ceiling fan apart, doing the vents, scrubbing tall walls and stuff. We ended up working until around midnight when I suggested we call it a day, but he didn't want to. He said he was going to use the bathroom, and so I sat to relax for a second. I then look up to see him putting the glass down, absolutely horrified and understandably freaking out. I probably should have mentioned that I had kept the glass on the floor with the cleaning solutions, which he had decided to move to another spot. He wasn't there when I had tried to clean the cat pee. Anyways, so he runs to the bathroom and is asking what it is. He's trying to throw up, but he can't. I feel so unbelievably bad. Eventually, we determine it should be okay, and we go back up and he drinks some water. What we now know from the poison control lady is do not drink anything if this happens. My poor boyfriend ended up spewing up uncontrollably for a little while and had cut his tongue so it was bleeding. It was a big mess. Luckily, he got most, if not all of it, out of his system. I gave him some cornflakes, and this dude goes upstairs and keeps cleaning. He's crazy, and I love him with my whole heart. Anyways, yeah, so that's how I accidentally poisoned my boyfriend with diluted hydrogen peroxide and cat pee. I have to say, I love that the original poster said no one bothered to clean the pee when it's her cat. Also, as someone who's owned a cat and knows how they smell, it's pretty amazing your boyfriend got the glass all the way up to his face without knowing what he was drinking. If he's drinking anything that's been kept around cleaning solutions in the first place, he's probably not the brightest bulb. That said, the fact he kept cleaning shows some next level dedication. I wouldn't reproduce with this man because I'm not sure the pair of you would create anything capable of surviving this crazy world. But other than that, I'd say you found some grade A husband material. I don't know. What do the comments think? What's the craziest thing a partner's ever done to help you out? Entitled Karen and Karen Jr. call my 9-year-old daughter ugly, so I let them know what I think of them both. First of all, I did not say this anywhere near said child. I would quite literally never do that, and chance completely destroying a child's self-confidence over my personal opinion. I also didn't say this until I had been badgered one too many times. So the backstory. I have 3 children. Like most parents, I am incredibly biased and think I have the cutest kids in the world. My kids are not my husband's biological children, but he has been in their lives for 5 years, and I think it might be important to note that my husband is 100% on my side here. His sister, my sister-in-law, has a 12-year-old daughter, Gabby, and it is 100% my sister-in-law's fault that her child looks the way she does. She is easily 100 pounds overweight, weighing in at almost 220 pounds. My sister-in-law and her husband are also well beyond the obese spectrum and have pushed this lifestyle off on their daughter. Unfortunately, due to this, Gabby gets bullied to the extreme because she looks like Porky Pig, and her mom keeps shaving her hair on one side, which just makes it look worse. I know I sound like a massive jerk even mentioning weight, but it's not just the weight factor. It's also the attitude that comes with it. Countless times, Gabby has told my daughter that she just isn't that cute. My daughter is 9. Or Gabby says things like, "You're not pretty like me." She's a jerk through and through. And again, it is 100% because of her parents. So yes, I'm going to be that person who says that this child and her parents are both ugly on the outside and the inside. My husband and I were talking the other day, and he was expressing concern, saying, "I'm so glad that you do not push that BS off on our kids, like my sister does, because it would be divorce-worthy. Even he is tired of the behavior." Well, we go to the beach, and they just happen to show up. Complete coincidence. And my sister-in-law says something to the effect of, "No one is as cute as my kid. She's going to be a heartbreaker." I ignore it and just smile. She's obviously biased like I am. It's normal. But then she says, "Your daughter has a really pointy nose, and it's super unsettling. And look at her legs. She's going to be way too skinny." Good thing I don't have to worry about that, because Gabby has a perfect figure. figure. I did lose it at this point and said, "Your kid isn't even cute. Don't bash my daughter to try and raise yours up." My husband's eyes went wide, and he kind of chuckled, which made my sister-in-law lose her ever-loving mind about me calling her kid ugly. Then my mother-in-law says I'm an effing loser for trying to compare kids. As she generally takes my sister-in-law's side for everything anyways, she thinks I started it, because that's what my sister-in-law told her. Now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk, because I've been told we are not welcome at family events until I apologize, which I will not do. My husband says it's no sweat off my bag, so I know he stands with me, but I still feel guilty. Am I the jerk? Okay, this is really tough. The original poster wants to know if she's a jerk for fat-shaming a 12-year-old girl, and the answer should obviously be yes. At the same time, there are mothers who would go for the throat if anyone insulted their little girl. Compared to what some moms would do, OP's reaction was practically kind. The real problem here is the OP mentioned several times that Gabby only behaves the way she does because she was taught by her parents. If that's the case, then there really is no call to bring her into the dispute with your sister-in-law. Just because you didn't say it directly to Gabby doesn't mean she didn't hear it or that it won't get back to her. It clearly made its way to the rest of the family, but you think Gabby's still in the dark about it? You haven't been invited back to family events because nobody wants their children being compared to Space Jam characters. Taking a stand against the way your sister-in-law talks about your daughter doesn't mean you can't apologize for making unnecessarily rude comments about your half-shaven pig niece, especially when your refusal to apologize is denying your daughter's right to a relationship with her extended family. What do you think? Did the OP go too far, or is it okay to let the claws out when someone insults your kids? My entitled brother lied to CPS about me. Now he wants to be involved in my son's life. I have a bad relationship with my older brother Tom. He's blind, and his condition has always been used as an excuse for how he treated me growing up. My parents always said he's struggling, and I should be sympathetic of his circumstances. But he has now admitted to anonymously calling Child Protective Services on me and my 7-year-old daughter after I refused to pay for one of his surgeries from my grandfather's inheritance money. I instead used the money for my daughter's private education. She has a learning disability, and public schools here were awful in how they treated her. Now I have an open file with CPS despite being clean of all accusations. I kept my distance from Tom and am now engaged to my fiance of 3 years. We just had our baby boy, 4 weeks old. I'm on good terms with most of my family. They visited my son many times and started trying to talk me into letting Tom visit to meet the baby. I refused and made it clear, but they kept pushing. Yesterday my parents came to visit, and when I opened the door, I was shocked to see they brought Tom with them. He was sitting in the car waiting. I snapped and asked my parents why they brought him, and they started begging, saying Tom deserved some grace and understanding due to his circumstances, and that he was really longing to meet his nephew. I was so upset I was caught off guard. In response, I said, "No, he's not allowed to meet my son after everything he's done. It's not like he could see him anyway." Tom heard that, and my parents gasped. They started arguing with me after Tom started crying. My fiance joined the argument and tried to break it up. He told me to go inside, and he then talked to my parents until they left. It was horrible. The whole family found out and started shaming me for mocking Tom's disability and making him feel hurt to the point of crying. My parents are livid with me, calling me all sorts of unhinged names, demanding I apologize. My fiance said he understood my anger, but that what I said was unacceptable. Look, you're not the jerk here, but you and the first OP have a real unhealthy taste for low-hanging fruit. That said, it's pretty hard to feel bad for somebody who uses a serious disability to manipulate people. That ruins things for everyone, because then people who legitimately need help have to deal with a population who associates them with entitled jerks like Tom, and no decent person makes a false CPS claim. That's one of the most nefarious things you can do to a parent. It isn't exactly a walk in the park for the child either. If he cares about you and your children little enough to pull a stunt like that, he doesn't deserve to be in your son's life. If your parents can't see that, they're blinder than Tom. Am I a jerk for calling my ex at 2 a.m. and telling him to cancel a vacation with his girlfriend? Our daughter got sick while on vacation with her dad a few months ago, and now whenever she's upset, she wants a specific parent to comfort her. It's impossible to get her to calm down if you're not the parent she wants. A few nights ago, she woke up at 2 a.m. after having a nightmare and wanted her dad. We are separated and don't live together, so I did try to calm her down myself first, but she was getting more and more distressed. Eventually, I caved and called my ex to ask him if he could come over to comfort her. He came over and managed to get her back to sleep, but because she was sleeping on him, he didn't want to move in case he woke her up again. He asked me to wake him up by 8 a.m. as he was supposed to be leaving for a vacation with his girlfriend a few hours later. I asked him not to go because I was worried our daughter would want him while he was away. After discussing it, he agreed not to. A few hours after he left, the girlfriend called me as she was upset that I had asked him to come over at 2 a.m. and because he canceled their vacation at the last minute because of me. She told me I was acting like a jealous ex-wife and accused me of using our daughter to control my ex, which isn't true. Am I the jerk here? Sorry, OP, but you sort of are. First of all, dealing with a screaming child is just part of being a parent. What would be your game plan if your daughter had her nightmare after he already left for vacation? Would you have demanded he come back? No, you would have found another way to deal with it, so your child will learn that her parents can't always come running. That's what you should have done here too. As for whether you're trying to control your ex, it doesn't matter. When you ask him to cancel a vacation, you are controlling him, whether you think you're trying to or not. It doesn't really matter if you're jealous or not. In fact, it's sort of worse if you aren't. His current relationship won't survive the strain you're putting on it for very long. If you're not trying to get back together with him, he's going to wind up wasting all his vacation days with nothing but blue balls to show for it. Not to mention, your daughter will grow up thinking she gets whatever she wants. Then, 20 years from now, I'll be stuck here telling strangers about how your daughter tried to steal an engagement ring that never existed from some Redditor with too much time on his hands. And nobody wants that. Click one of the videos on screen right now.